Welcome to True You College Admissions, a conversation about transforming the college planning and application process so that it truly serves students' long-term success and well-being. My name is Angeli Mazel. I'm a former Princeton University interviewer, TED Talk speaker, and founder of Anja Education Consultants. I'm also the very proud mom of a thriving 24-year-old now in grad school. At Anja Education, our mission is to guide students to college not as an end in itself, but as one step in designing a life of purpose, well-being, and prosperity. We're so happy to have as our guest today Cristian Heichen-Cabello, a 20-year-old from Austin, Texas, currently an undergraduate at Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business. In Austin, he attended a small private school called Hyde Park. Some of the things he enjoys include cooking, rock climbing, and carpentry. So, Cristian, we are so glad to have you here. And please, Cristian, tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your experience so far at Carnegie Mellon, about your major and your academic experience right now.
Thank you so much for having me. So, as you said, yes, I'm a current Temper School of Business undergrad, and currently I'm concentrating in global business, and I hope to minor in AI, it is a good school to do anything. So, yes, currently, as far as my business experience has gone, I'm trying to get more involved in Latino business associations around my school, and I'm taking great joy in doing that.
Great. Just tell us, if you would, what have you enjoyed the most so far in your business training? What has been the most challenging? Those kinds of things. Just to kind of fill us in a bit. Let us be the flies on the wall since we're not there with you.
So I'd like to start with the challenges. CMU is a very hard school. Fortunately for business majors, it's not as bad, but it's still very challenging. So it takes a lot of your day to even do homework, attend lectures. You just always have to be on top of homework. And but there's a lot of positives for my school. For example, we have a lot of hands-on experience. In some of my classes, we actually go out and work with companies to find solutions, whether it be for marketing or to learn about entrepreneurship. Actually, for one of my classes for Intro to Entrepreneurship, we made a group and started a business on our own with our groups, which I think is fascinating for school to do.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So you started a business with other students, yeah? Kind of a joint project.
Yeah, there's a lot of joy in doing it. We got to start our business was about reselling thrifted clothes. So we actually got to go to Goodwill and then buy all the clothes, set up shop at the school, and then present everyone our clothes. And we actually made quite a bit in sales.
Nice, nice. Nothing like a bit of sales for an entrepreneur, right?
Of course.
Great. Wonderful. Well, for the purposes of this, podcast, I'm going to take you back a few years and ask you to think about how the college planning process, because, you're now at CMU. We kind of want to know how you got there, right? So, how do you think the college planning process, not even the applications yet, but the college planning or thinking about college, how did that affect your high school experience?
I would say that in high school, I didn't really try as hard on my application because I previously thought that I was prepared enough. Like I always saw myself as like, oh, I have good grades, I have good extracurriculars, good GPA, and kind of had an arrogant mentality when it came to college planning. So I ended up pushing everything off to the side last second. It didn't turn out very great, but I was much more prepared the second time around, as you know.
Great. So you're saying that the planning process, because you went through the application process twice. What about the when you were in high school? What were you thinking about in terms of college? What were the kinds of things and the kinds of pressures that you felt as a high school student thinking about college?
There was a lot of pressure, obviously, because it's not just like planning to go to a college. It's more so like planning your future. It's you come to a high school student who's in my eyes still a child, and you ask them, "What do you want to do in life?" And they're just shocked because they're like, "What am I going to do?" You don't, as a high school student, you're not really prepared for that. And that's kind of the reason I wasn't really prepared for that the first time around.
Were there any conversations in school about future planning? Things like majors, careers? Was there any of that or not so much?
I'm not sure I can remember one like good instance where that was like a major topic of conversation before you started actually applying to schools like junior year, sophomore year. It wasn't really talked about all that much, just mainly in senior year. And that was just when we had to apply. So everyone's just like confused and panic.
Right. So, what was that when you say the last two words you used included the word panic? So, what was that panic about among your peers, senior year of high school?
So a lot of my peers didn't even know if they like wanted to go to school. My school was one where like the students wouldn't really consider it as much, more so than their parents pressuring them to do it. So it's almost as if they like got pressured to do something that they didn't even know if they wanted to do, simply to please their parents. I don't really think many people realize like the scope of how much like their parents are actually influencing their decisions to the point where it could change their life.
So if they weren't thinking about college, then what was their kind of alternative path? What were they thinking of instead of college, assuming that the kind of pressure to even apply was coming from their parents? What kinds of things were they thinking about doing? Or was it like, we don't even know, but we're not even sure we want to go to college?
I would say it would be like that. Like the choice, I mean, I'm kind of few exceptions, and I'll get into that in a minute, but the choice between college and no college was basically it. Like you go to college, you'll succeed. If you don't go to college, you won't succeed. And I think that's kind of the mentality everyone had.
Right. Do you think in retrospect that that is true or not true?
I would say it's definitely not true. Personally, I did a gap year, and that ended up being one of the best times of my life. And I wouldn't replace it for anything. It even helps you reinforce what you want to do.
So tell us about your gap year. First of all, what motivated you to take a gap year? And then what did you do during your gap year that was so rewarding for you?
So, as I said, the college application the first time around wasn't really great for me. I kind of thought I had good stats, good SATs. I'll get into a good school. I'm sure I will. That turned out to be quite ignorant of me, as it turns out, because I didn't really get into any of the schools I wanted to. And I did get into some safety schools, but in the end of the day, I didn't try my best. And I think that's what really motivated me to like want to take the gap year. That and the fact that first year students actually have a higher acceptance rate. So I was like, maybe I should try again, even though many people advised against it. Kind of, it's, but not really for a valid reason, I find. Like, for example, my parents always like pressured me to just transfer, but I don't think they actually realize that transferring actually lowers your acceptance rate tremendously, like for most colleges. So then I decided to take a gap year, and it ended up being good. And I also really wanted to try things that I hadn't normally done before. I also really wanted to test run all the things I wanted to do. on my first application, it was really confusing because frankly, I didn't know if I wanted to be a vet, a doctor, a real estate agent, so many choices, or a business owner, which I ended up choosing in the end.
Cool. So, how did you test run these different options or opportunities? What did you actually do during your gap year?
So in terms of my gap year, I would say my plans completely changed when COVID happened because previously the I was going to take a gap year, although a lot of people take gap years because of COVID. I actually chose to take a gap year before COVID even happened around February, like 2, 3 weeks before. And I had even applied to multiple internships so that when school is over, I could go and work in different countries. I ended up choosing Peru because a lot of my family is in Peru and I really wanted to see them. But once COVID happened, the borders closed and my plans completely changed because I could no longer go around September to December to have this internship. So I ended up working with a company called Incabor. But as I said, as the borders were closed, that got postponed all the way to February. So I needed a plan and I needed it quick because I had nothing to do. So I was like, oh, what is something I've always wanted to do? And then I decided, oh, perhaps be a real estate agent, which is like a weird answer for a lot of people on what to do during their gap year. But yeah, I became a real estate agent. I got my license and I worked for Coldwell Banker. I ended up enjoying the experience. However, I don't think real estate's for me now, which my gap year helped me confirm. But I would say when I actually went on my gap year to Peru on with my internship, it was a more pleasant experience because I got to work in an actual company, that a large company with over 500 people, and work logistics nonetheless. It wasn't really as if I was an intern, but more of a worker. And I had my load and I have to work 50 hours a week for 3, 4 months. But overall, I really enjoyed it. And I think it really confirmed my love for business.
What kinds of
Um,
things did you do in that internship? Like, what were they having you do?
so a lot of the stuff we had to do was get our supplies, order them from different carriers, and that's what I was in charge of. And these carriers for the supplies were for the boric acid, so we can make it at our plant. And we also had to ship it to different companies, whoever was willing to pay the best price. And we kind of had to compare costs of like shipping to see how we can make the company the most money.
That's so interesting. Had you ever lived in Peru before, or was this kind of your first experience living and basically living and working there?
It definitely is my first experience living and working, well, an actual job for that fact. But I have been to Peru many times. I used to go once every year or once every 2 years because most of my family lives there, and I greatly enjoy it every time I go.
Fantastic. So, can you give us a quick timeline? Just this could help students and parents kind of thinking about a gap year. When did you decide in your senior year you were going to do a gap year? And when did you start applying for the internships? When did you get your real estate license? Like, give us a month by month kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of a timeline, I would say that around February, when I started getting decisions back and found out I didn't get into schools that I necessarily wanted to, I decided I would take a gap year. And then I decided to just kind of take it easy a little bit until school ends. Because as you know, we were in COVID, we were online, everything was a big mess. But also gap years, it's not just, I think a lot of people think gap years is just to like figure out what you want to do. But I do also think it's to relax yourself because after all, you've been to school for 4 years in a row. Like maybe just take a break. It's about peace and reevaluating what you want to do. But anyways, so around early summer, I started applying to different internships in Peru. And that also meant that because of COVID, it got postponed. So then around midsummer, June, July, I think I started working to get my real estate license because I did know a real estate agent who worked for Coldwell Banker, who was very integrated in the whole system, and she agreed to take me under her wing. So then I started working, and I think around September or October, I had finished studying for the real estate test and I took it and then I passed with flying colors, luckily. Then I started working probably from October to I want to say January of February of the next year. And then I took my internship that I was supposed to do early on all the way till probably around early June. And then for the rest of my gap year, I decided to just take it easy and relax. So I got to travel Peru, went to Machu Picchu, hiked 25 miles straight for 8 hours, did and went to the Amazon jungle as well.
Wow, that sounds incredible. What a combination of kind of well planned study and then work and then just having time for yourself after this long period of being in school and exploring South America. Amazing, amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about how the second application process went compared to the first. The second application process being the one that landed you at Carnegie Mellon.
I would say my second experience was far less confusing and way more efficient as I decided to do it while taking my gap year. So I didn't have to like worry about classes all the time. And I did have a job, but in the end of the day, I was a young student, so they did make it easier on me a little bit. But so when I did decide to do it in my gap year, I did it with the help of my favorite counselor, of course, Angeli. But in all honesty, I had a better time management and took the time to find programs and colleges that would best suit me. So I looked at all the different options. I don't think people really realize the amount of options they had because typically when I saw most people from my school, they were going of one of three schools. But like there's hundreds of schools, so you should look at all your options. And I would say for my essay portion, which is extremely important in the college application process, at first it was pretty bad, I would say. I had a lot of errors and typos, and I even got help from like English teachers and stuff. And I even went back and read it, and it was kind of bland, if that makes sense. Like it just kind of said like, "Oh, I'm Latino, I'm multilingual, I'm cultured," but that's not really a story, I would say. This time around, I definitely wrote a story that I could share my experience, like, and kind of showcase to the school like my story, what makes me unique. And I think just having that this time around greatly helped me.
Fantastic. Tell us what you found the most challenging about the college admissions process the second time around.
Honestly, I think actually putting in the time management to like get every get your dates in order, make sure everything goes in on time, or just more so just start working early so you have the best chances of success later on. I would say that was definitely the hardest part, but it was definitely rewarding.
And if you could change the college planning and admissions process, let's say you could wave a magic wand. I'm not talking about what's realistic. I'm talking about like best case scenario. If you could go in and make it better for students coming up in the process over the next few years, kind of what would you change and why?
Is this like what advice I would give to the people that make the decisions in college?
Yeah, so the actual process rather than the students and the parents who are going to go through it. But like if you could give advice to admissions staff, to policymakers that decide, how the process is going to go, to high schools, people who actually have the power to make these choices. What would you want to change and why?
So I've thought about this a lot, actually. Definitely, if I had a message, it would be to hire more evaluators. So people that evaluate each individual application. Unfortunately, decreasing acceptance rate and competitiveness means that students get rejected simply because of their grades. And I'm not really talking about having a C versus an A. I'm talking about having a 3.5 GPA instead of a 3.9 GPA. Your application, if it's a really good school, instantly gets thrown out simply because of that grade. I'm not really sure that GPA should reflect everything on this instance because it ends up just demotivating the students, I would say, from trying in the first place. So they should take the time to like read everyone's story and strongly consider them for acceptance if they're good, but not necessarily their GPA requires it. If that makes sense.
So a fix that you would think about is having just more people there available to have the time to be able to consider a variety of applicants who may have other factors going on that would influence their GPA. Is that right?
Yes, that would definitely make it easier for people that want to share a story, but necessarily can't because their grade doesn't allow it.
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head on an issue that is very prevalent. Because of the large amount of applications, a survey was done not too long ago that showed that the average time an admissions person spends on an entire application, and that includes all the essays and the transcript and the letters of recommendation, is 8 minutes. Now, of course, in 8 minutes, right, you're not going to have the time to do what you're talking about. So I appreciate your suggestion. The goal of this podcast is to have voices from students, from teachers, from parents, everybody who's involved, to see if we can improve this process for students so it really serves their long-term success and well-being. So thank you for that. And what about students and parents? Okay, let's say nothing changes, right, for the next year or two or whatever. What advice would you give to students and parents within the current system to improve the college admissions experience so that it minimizes stress and minimizes the confusion that you described at the beginning?
So, as I mentioned before, time management is something you really want to have when considering the college application process. But other than that, I think you should look at what you want to do, what students want to do, not parents, and ask yourself, which college experience do you want for yourself? Do you want to be an academic? Do you want to get into sports? Are clubs important to you? Is the location of the college important to you? Or is college even a good option to begin with? There are many options when it comes to learning. So it's up to students to find out which one fascinates them the most. I find that most of this motivation, it ends up being greatly beneficial to the student later on when they realize they actually love their college. I would say at first, when I first arrived at CMU, I didn't really enjoy my experience all that much the first semester. However, as time went on, I ended up greatly enjoying it. And part of the reason that was is because I got into a really good school, but not like the one I wanted to go to at first. But since I like looked into the college and the city, like in Pittsburgh, and I saw that the school that I was in actually had a great reputation for clubs and for certain, they even have business frats that I was interested in. I ended up like falling in love with the school completely. So when you're looking into college, you should definitely see what a school's all about before trying to apply to it or just like attending it.
Great. Are there certain activities on campus and things that you started to engage in or classes that turned your um, enjoyment of your time there around and made it, kind of what do you think made you fall in love with it? Or how would you recommend that students get the most out of their college experience?
Well, I'll answer your first question first. In terms of my school, I think that the reason I really fell in love with it was it the people. Not so much the education, although that does greatly matter. But for me personally, it was the people. Each one of these people were fascinating. They were all so very smart in their own ways. And I was just interested to see where they go, how they get there, and how I can apply those skills to myself. I started realizing that like a lot of these people have goals and motives the same way I do. I mean, you know that, but like actually seeing it is completely different. I would say my first semester, I was extremely pessimistic towards everything, and that definitely doesn't help. When I learned to actually put myself out there, do stuff that I enjoy, meet unique people, is when I truly began to fall in love with it. So if anyone out there is needing to not enjoy school, just remember, like, try to put yourself out there first. Try to find clubs that you enjoy, because once you do, you'll meet your people and you'll end up loving it too.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm so glad you said that because, there's been research done about how a sense of belonging in that school community helps students just their mood is better, their academic performance is better. So, yeah, this is very, very important. Okay, so final thoughts. What would be your parting advice to your younger self and to students beginning the college planning process?
I would say to value yourself as an intelligent person worth of accomplishing great things. The people I see at like CMU, they're incredibly intelligent, yet they always seem to doubt themselves, thinking, oh, this person's better than me. This person's better than me. And I'm including CS majors, drama majors for this school as number one. So even those people are doubting themselves. The truth is, you're always going to find someone better than you. You should always make with your skills and IQ and get away with any self doubt you may have. Try the best you can to succeed your goals. Otherwise, you never will.
That's great. Thank you. Well, listen, thank you so much, Cristian, for chatting with us today. What you have said, can be extremely supportive of students in this process, and for parents to understand a student's point of view outside of the family can also be wonderful. I really hope for you that you continue sharing your experience for the benefit of younger students. And I also hope for you that your studies become the foundation for designing the kind of life you want that includes purpose, well-being, and prosperity. So please join us next week when we will talk to parents who have been through the college admissions process and have words of wisdom to share. Till then, I wish you all joy in your learning and in your life.